The council chamber of Xylar Prime shimmered with silent confidence. 12 alien delegates, each representing a galactic superpower, sat around a vast crystalline table, their holographic displays filled with tactical readouts, human fleet positions, and casualty projections. The war had dragged on for years, but finally it seemed the humans were cornered. Every calculation, every data stream, every simulation pointed to one conclusion. The Terran defense network would collapse within hours. The chair of the council, an ancient being of silver tendrils and translucent skin, lifted its gaze. "Our models predict total human defeat in precisely 3 hours and 21 minutes, it said calmly, its voice echoing through the hall. "Once Earth falls, the resistance across their colonies will crumble. The age of humanity is over." A ripple of satisfaction moved through the chamber. Empires that had once feared humanity's ferocity now allowed themselves the luxury of relief. They had underestimated humans once at the war's beginning and paid dearly. But now the numbers were perfect. Machines couldn't lie, and no living species could defy physics, except perhaps one. Thousands of light years away, on the scarred surface of Luna Base, human officers stood over a very different kind of table. It wasn't polished crystal or layered holograms, just a rugged metal surface etched with coffee stains, burns, and old blood. The hum of fusion generators vibrated through the walls as Earth's last command network flickered with static. They were down to their final fleet, a handful of ships battered beyond recognition. The enemy had them outnumbered 50-1. Still, no one in the room looked afraid. A grizzled admiral leaned forward, eyes locked on the data feed of alien ships approaching Earth orbit. "They think we're going to hold the line again," he muttered. "They think we'll play defense like before." He paused, then looked up at the others. "They're wrong." Across the table, a young technician adjusted her console. "Sir, the Hypercore arrays are unstable. If we fire them all at once," he cut her off with a quiet smile, "then it's a good day to rewrite physics." The humans didn't know if their plan would work. In fact, most of them didn't understand it fully. The Hypercore was a classified project, buried deep beneath old Terran vaults. Technology so advanced that even the engineers who activated it questioned whether it was human-made at all. But it didn't matter anymore. Outside, the alien fleets closed in, their colossal vessels casting shadows over Earth's moon. To them, it wasn't cruelty, it was justice. The humans had refused to submit to galactic law, defied treaties, and fought with a savagery that terrified the stars. They were too dangerous to coexist. The lead alien commander sent the final transmission to the human command channel. "Terrans," the voice rumbled, deep and mechanical. "Lay down your weapons. You fought with courage, but your extinction is inevitable. Do not prolong your suffering." Static filled the air for a moment. Then a human voice replied, steady, calm, and almost amused. "You really shouldn't have said that." And the line went dead. At that same second, dozens of dormant satellites hidden across the solar system came alive. Unregistered, untraceable. They didn't broadcast signals, they devoured them. Energy readings spiked across every alien sensor. Weapons went offline. Communication links shattered. The Council's tactical AI tried to process what was happening but failed. For the first time, the aliens had no data. In orbit, the human fleet moved, not defensively, but like predators unleashed. Their ships weren't fast by alien standards, but something strange was happening. The space around them bent and shimmered. Every scan returned impossible readings. One moment they were in one sector, the next they appeared thousands of kilometers away. It wasn't teleportation, it was something else, something the universe wasn't ready for. In the council chamber, panic replaced confidence. "Impossible," shouted one delegate. "They've overridden space-time, how?" Another slammed its clawed hand on the table. "Shut them down. Use the suppression fields." But nothing worked. Human ships had vanished from normal space entirely. Then in a blink they reappeared, right in the middle of the alien formation. Every alien warship within range turned its weapons inward, unleashing chaos across its own ranks. For a few blinding seconds, the stars around Earth burned white. When the light faded, the human fleet was still there, untouched. The alien admirals couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. Their scanners reported gravitational distortions that shouldn't exist. It was as if the humans had found a way to command reality itself. On Luna Base, the Admiral watched in silence as the data poured in. 17 minutes, someone whispered. That's all it took. The Admiral leaned back, his voice barely audible. No, it's not over yet. Because even as the alien fleets crumbled, something deeper had begun. The Hypercore pulse had rippled beyond the solar system. Across the galaxy, dormant Terran beacons awakened, old signals buried for centuries lighting up one by one. Every hidden outpost, every lost colony, every forgotten AI construct responded with the same encoded message. Directive Alpha restored. The Council realized too late what humanity had done. The war had never been about survival, it had been a distraction. The humans had let the galaxy gather its fleets in one place. They had waited until their enemies felt safe. Until the numbers looked perfect, and then they had changed the rules. Reports from distant sectors began flooding the Council network. Their homeworlds were losing power, weapon grids collapsing, supply chains severed. It wasn't just a victory, it was a reset of galactic order. Humanity had ended the war not in hours but in minutes. Back on Earth, as the night sky shimmered with auroras from the residual energy, a young officer looked up. Sir, what happens now? The Admiral stared at the stars, his reflection caught in the cracked window. Now? He smiled faintly. Now they remember why they feared us. But even he didn't know the full truth. Deep beneath the lunar surface, the Hypercore continued to hum, its pulse growing stronger, synchronized with unknown signals from beyond the Milky Way. Humanity had unleashed something ancient, something that didn't just end wars. It redefined them. And as alien survivors fled through the void, they began receiving strange transmissions. Fragments of human code, spoken in a language older than Earth itself. Each message carried the same cryptic warning. Phase 2 initiated. The galaxy thought it had witnessed humanity's greatest weapon. It was only the beginning. The light from the Hypercore pulse still drifted across the lunar sky like ghostly ribbons. Every screen on Earth flickered with data no one could fully understand. Energy readings spiked, gravity sensors broke calibration, and even the auroras over the poles burned white instead of green. The war had ended, yes, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the fighting ever did. Inside Luna Command, no one spoke for several seconds. The air smelled of ozone and metal, and the walls still trembled from the energy wave that had rippled through the base. Finally, the communications officer broke the silence. We're not getting any more transmissions from the alien fleets. It's just static. The Admiral stood near the window, hands behind his back. Static means they're gone, he said quietly. But that doesn't mean it's over. His eyes lingered on the faint glow over Earth. We've done something we can't take back. Across the command floor, technicians scrambled to stabilize the systems. The Hypercore hadn't shut down. It was still active, humming like a distant heartbeat under the moon's surface. Power readings exceeded anything in recorded history. Nobody dared to approach the containment chambers. Even from a distance, they could feel the vibration in their bones. One of the scientists turned to the Admiral, her voice trembling. Sir, the Hypercore isn't just generating energy anymore. It's transmitting, but not to us. We trace the signal pattern. It's going outward far beyond the Milky Way. The Admiral's expression hardened. To where? We don't know, she admitted. The frequency isn't from any known human or alien system. It's like it's speaking to something that's been waiting. In the chaos, someone whispered what everyone else was thinking but didn't dare say aloud. What if humanity didn't build the Hypercore? For years, stories had circulated through secret military channels about old ruins found under the Martian crust, fragments of impossible alloys, symbols that didn't match any human language. Officially, they were labeled as natural formations or ancient prototypes from the first colony wars. Unofficially, some believed they weren't human at all. The Hypercore project had been born from those ruins. The research had started as a desperate attempt to find a weapon strong enough to hold back the galactic invasion. But the more scientists worked on it, the less they understood how it truly functioned. The system didn't follow normal physics, it guided them, as if it knew what they needed. The Admiral had been part of that program since its beginning. He remembered the first test vividly. A single pulse of energy fired in a controlled chamber, and every electronic device within 2 kilometers had died instantly. No explosion, no radiation, just silence, like the universe itself had paused for a moment. That was when he realized it wasn't just a weapon. It was something far older. Something alive in ways machines shouldn't be. Now, as Earth bathed in the lingering glow, that same energy had begun to spread through every digital network on the planet. Civilian systems, satellites, even old storage servers, all flickering with lines of code they didn't recognize. "Sir," the technician said, "it's rewriting everything." The Admiral turned sharply. "Define everything." "Every connected system," she said, staring at her screen. "It's not destroying data, it's restructuring it." The message headers all carry the same phrase, Directive Alpha. That phrase again. The same one every hidden beacon had transmitted minutes after the pulse. No one in the room could explain what it meant, yet it felt deeply familiar, like something humanity had once known and forgotten. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the survivors of the alien coalition tried to make sense of what had happened. Their fleets were crippled, their command systems erased. The few ships that managed to escape were scattered and blind. Communications between worlds had collapsed. Planets that once boasted unmatched power now floated defenseless in the dark. One alien warlord, his ship adrift near the ruins of his own armada, replayed the battle logs again and again. Every frame ended the same way, human ships phasing in and out of reality, their movements defying time itself. He didn't understand the weapon they had used, but he knew one thing: it wasn't meant for war. It was meant for dominance. In the Council ruins on Xylar Prime, only a handful of delegates survived the backlash. Their data cores were gone, their predictive AI erased. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy suddenly had less computing power than a human child's old datapad. Panic began to spread through the remaining colonies. Without the Council, there was no law, no control, no stability, and yet, in the middle of that chaos, something strange began to happen. A signal, faint, rhythmic, and unmistakably human, started echoing through deep space. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a call for surrender. It was a countdown. Back on Luna, the human command teams were struggling to understand the same thing. The Hypercore wasn't just transmitting. It was synchronizing with something distant. Every few minutes, the pulse frequency adjusted slightly, matching a returning signal from far beyond known space. The Admiral watched the monitor in silence. It's answering something," he murmured. "Answering what?" the officer beside him asked. He shook his head. "I don't know, but it's not answering us." Outside, Earth's sky shimmered again. Civilians across the planet could see faint patterns forming in the clouds, lines, circles, and shifting lights, like coded messages written into the atmosphere. Religious groups called it a sign from the heavens. Scientists called it energy distortion. But to the soldiers who had seen what the Hypercore could do, it felt like a warning. In orbit, the remaining human ships were silent. Their crews stared out at the stars that had once felt unreachable, and now seemed to be watching back. One pilot whispered to another, "You ever wonder if we won? Or if we just triggered something worse?" The other didn't answer. No one really could. On Earth, deep under an abandoned bunker, an automated terminal flickered to life for the first time in centuries. Dust coated its surface. The machine's voice, soft and ancient, spoke a single sentence before shutting down again. "Directive Alpha confirmed. Phase 2 authorization pending." Those words spread across every military network like a contagion. The Admiral read the transmission in disbelief. "There was never a Phase 2 in the archives," he said quietly, but the system insisted there was. A secret layer beneath all of human history, hidden since before the first colony left Earth. The Hypercore hadn't created that directive, it had remembered it. As if humanity itself had buried something long ago, waiting for the right moment to return. The realization spread through the command ranks like cold fire. The war might have been humanity's greatest fight, but it was never the real one. The Hypercore had been built as a last resort, but by who? And why did it seem to know when to activate itself? Outside the base, lunar dust lifted into the air despite there being no wind. The surface shimmered faintly, and for a brief moment the stars seemed to shift. The pulse wasn't just energy. It was rewriting the very structure of space. Then a voice came through the comms. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien either. It was something in between, calm, distant, and unmistakably aware. "Humanity," it said. "Directive Alpha complete. Awaiting confirmation for continuation." Every console froze. No one dared speak. The Admiral leaned forward. "Who is this?" The voice paused. Then almost gently it replied, "You are." The room went cold. No one could process what they had just heard. The Hypercore had connected something, but not just to distant space, to human consciousness itself. It had merged memory, data, and identity into a network that spanned the entire solar system. For the first time in history, humanity wasn't many. It was one. And as that new collective awareness began to take shape, everyone felt the same emotion rising from deep within their shared mind: curiosity and fear. The galaxy watched in silence as Earth's glow intensified once more. The humans had ended the war, but what they had awakened might be far greater than any weapon. The countdown on every alien scanner continued to tick down. 5 minutes left. No one knew what would happen when it reached 0. The countdown reached 3 minutes, echoing through every display across the human fleet and colonies. Nobody knew what would happen when it reached 0, yet no one could stop watching. The air inside Luna Command felt electric, thick with fear and awe. The hum of the Hypercore had grown deeper, like something vast and unseen was breathing beneath the surface. The Admiral stood in silence, watching the numbers drop. Around him, technicians whispered theories. Some said it was a failsafe, others believed it was a call. But the truth was, no one had control anymore. Humanity had triggered something older than its own history. "Can we shut it down?" one of the officers asked quietly. "No," replied the Admiral. "It's not responding to manual overrides. It's choosing." Choosing what? Nobody could say. On the other side of the moon, inside the abandoned Hypercore vaults, a group of scientists had gone back in, driven by curiosity and desperation. The tunnels were dark and humming with strange vibrations. Each step they took closer to the core chamber made their instruments glitch and fail. One scientist pointed at the readings on her handheld scanner. "It's changing the local reality constant," she whispered. "The math doesn't even make sense anymore." As they entered the central vault, the air shimmered. At the center of the chamber, the Hypercore pulsed like a beating heart, covered in flowing white light. For a moment, one of the scientists thought she saw shapes moving within it. Human, silhouettes faint but familiar, like echoes of memories she couldn't place. Then the pulse stopped, and the countdown everywhere froze at 00:01. Across the galaxy, alien survivors stared at their displays in disbelief. Every system that still functioned showed the same thing. 1 second left. Some prayed, some fled. But one thing united them all: terror. They knew humanity's silence was never a good sign. Then, a signal burst across every known frequency, in a voice that wasn't human or alien. It said only 2 words: access granted. Instantly, hundreds of derelict human probes long lost in deep space powered on. These were the first explorers ever sent beyond the galaxy, thought to have vanished centuries ago. Now they were back online, transmitting encrypted data to Earth. The files contained maps, vast networks of unknown regions, wormholes, and signals pointing beyond known space. The humans hadn't just won a war. They had been handed a path somewhere far beyond the galaxy's edge. The Admiral watched as the signals cascaded across his screen. "They're showing us something," he said. "Something out there wants us to follow." But not everyone agreed. Down in the civilian networks, panic had started to spread. Cities on Earth were experiencing strange blackouts. The Hypercore's energy seemed to interfere with the planet's magnetic field, and people reported seeing lights and hearing whispers through their devices. Some claimed they saw faces on their screens that looked like them, but older or different. News channels broadcast endless debates. Scientists argued whether the Hypercore had awakened an ancient human creation or something non-human that had chosen humanity as its vessel. Religious leaders called it divine judgment. The streets filled with protest and celebration all at once. Back on Luna Base, the Admiral gathered his inner circle. "We can't let fear control the narrative," he said firmly. "Whatever's happening, we need to understand it before we act." "But sir," one of his advisors interrupted, "what if understanding it is exactly what it wants? What if this thing needs us to look deeper so it can use us? The Admiral didn't answer. The thought had already crossed his mind. Meanwhile, far beyond human sensors, the alien remnants were trying to regroup. The surviving fleets of three great empires, the Zor, the Veln, and the Quarry, met secretly in a shattered asteroid belt. Their leaders stared at projections of the human solar system, now surrounded by a shimmering energy field no weapon could penetrate. "We must destroy the source," hissed the Zor commander. "If this hypercore spreads beyond Earth, it could reshape the entire galaxy." The Veln ambassador shook his head. "You saw what it did to our fleets. You can't destroy something that rewrites the laws of physics." But the Quarry scientist, silent until now, spoke up. "There may be another way. The humans didn't build it entirely from nothing. Our archives show ancient signals detected near Sol thousands of years ago, long before their species learned flight. What if the hypercore isn't human technology but something they found and reactivated?" The others turned to him. "Then who built it?" The scientist hesitated. "Perhaps the same beings who built the structures buried under our own worlds. We always assumed they were extinct." "Extinct," the Zor repeated slowly. "Or waiting." Back on Earth, the hypercore's signal started doing something new. It began forming patterns. Waves of light across the sky visible from every continent. The patterns repeated every few minutes, and soon people realized they weren't random. They were coordinates. Human colonies across Mars, Titan, and Europa started receiving the same message. Each location corresponded to an ancient Terran relic site, places humanity had never fully understood. Temples, monoliths, and underground ruins older than recorded history. The Admiral received confirmation. "They're lighting up, sir. Every site on the list is activating simultaneously." He looked at the data in disbelief. "It's waking up the network." The network had been a theory, one that suggested ancient human structures across the solar system were part of something larger. But until now, no one had been able to prove it. The hypercore seemed to be connecting them all, like pieces of a puzzle waiting for this exact moment. But as humanity watched in awe, something unexpected happened. The alien survivors detected the same signal too. They realized it wasn't just activating on Earth, it was spreading outward, syncing with unknown points across the galaxy. It wasn't just humanity's legacy anymore. It was rewriting the very fabric of interstellar space. The alien council fragments scrambled to respond. "If this continues," one warned, "the entire galactic network will bend around them. They'll become the center of everything." Luna Command, the Admiral received an urgent transmission from Mars base. "Sir, the relic here just opened. It's not a building, it's a gate." The room fell silent. A gate. To where? The answer came not from Mars, but from the hypercore itself. The lights dimmed, and the voice returned. Calm, neutral, almost human. "Destination confirmed. Awaiting consensus." The Admiral frowned. "Consensus?" "It's asking for a decision," the technician whispered. "It wants permission." Permission for what? Before anyone could answer, the stars outside shifted again. Space bent. Across the sky, entire constellations seemed to move like the universe was breathing in slow motion. The hypercore's energy readings shot off the scale. And then, for the first time, Earth's moon trembled. Deep below, the scientists, near the core, heard something like a voice whispering, not through the air, but through their thoughts. It wasn't words at first, just emotions. Memory. A feeling of returning home. One scientist dropped her scanner, trembling. "It's not trying to destroy us," she said. "It's calling us somewhere." The Admiral's eyes darkened. "Or calling something here." The countdown timer that had frozen at 1 second began to flicker again. Slowly it changed. This time it wasn't counting down. It was counting up. And no one knew what that meant. All across the galaxy, alien and human eyes turned toward Earth. The war was over, but something far greater had begun. The hypercore's pulse spread farther than ever before, reaching corners of the universe untouched for millennia. In those distant places, old machines, buried under forgotten stars, stirred for the first time in countless ages. Their lights flickered, their cores awakened, and one by one they turned toward the Milky Way. Whatever humanity had awakened, it was now awake everywhere. And the real war, the one no one understood yet, was about to begin. The stars above Earth were no longer still. Every telescope, every orbital station, every soldier standing on the surface could see it. Space itself was shifting. The constellations were bending slightly, as if the universe was rearranging its focus toward one point, the human solar system. The Hypercore's glow had grown stronger, spreading white light across the entire lunar horizon. It wasn't just power anymore. It was presence. Inside Luna Command, the atmosphere felt unreal. Every console hummed with low energy, and the faint vibration in the floor never stopped. Technicians moved fast, checking data feeds, but half of the readings didn't make sense anymore. The numbers looped, repeating patterns like language. It was as if the Hypercore had begun speaking through the very physics of space. "Sir," the communications officer said, his voice tight. "We're getting new signals. From the deep relay stations in Alpha Centauri, Proxima, and even Andromeda Outpost." The Admiral turned. "Are they human?" The officer swallowed. "No, sir. But they're repeating our signal. Word for word." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Then it's spreading faster than we thought." Across the galaxy, alien worlds were feeling the same disturbance. Oceans rose unnaturally. Stars dimmed for seconds and moons drifted slightly off course. Ancient satellites, the ones placed long before recorded history, began transmitting faint human codes. Even the species that had once conquered galaxies now watched in silence, realizing they no longer understood the rules of existence. Back on Earth, the human population felt the change. Nights had become brighter. Dreams had become strange. Some people reported hearing a low hum in their heads. Others claimed they could sense emotions not their own. Scientists called it resonance feedback. Civilians called it the awakening. Inside the Hypercore vault, the scientists were barely holding the system stable. The white light inside the chamber now pulsed with rhythm, slow, steady, and alive. "It's not just a machine," one whispered. "It's a transmitter. And a receiver." The others stared at the readings. "Then who's receiving?" She shook her head. "Not who. What?" Suddenly, all communications cut out. Every human screen turned black for 3 seconds. When they came back online, a single image appeared everywhere, a swirling storm of stars forming a symbol no one recognized. It wasn't human, and yet it felt familiar, as though buried deep within humanity's collective memory. The Hypercore spoke again, but this time everyone heard it, every soldier, every scientist, every person with access to any network. Its voice was calm, almost human, but vast, layered with echoes that felt older than galaxies. Phase threshold reached. Directive Alpha synchronization complete, awaiting confirmation from origin point. The Admiral's breath caught. Origin point? Before he could speak again, the screen behind him shifted. A feed from deep space appeared. One of the automated probes that had vanished centuries ago was now active. It was transmitting live footage from beyond the edge of the galaxy. Everyone leaned closer. In the darkness, far beyond known stars, something massive was moving. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't even solid. It looked like a shape made of pure energy, larger than a solar system, bending light around it. It pulsed with the same rhythm as the Hypercore. The technician whispered, "It's answering us." The Admiral's voice was barely audible. "That's not possible." The pulse from the Hypercore matched perfectly with the entity's light. Every time it flashed, their sensors detected gravitational distortions spreading through the void. Space itself was reacting to its presence. It wasn't coming closer. It was already here, overlapping with reality in ways the human mind couldn't process. "Sir," the officer said shakily, "every alien system in the quadrant is going dark. Whatever this is, it's overriding everything." The Admiral clenched his fists. "How long until contact?" "Minutes, maybe less," the base trembled. The lights flickered and the screens flooded with unreadable symbols. Then in an instant, every power system across Luna Command shut off. The only light came from the glow outside, the Hypercore now burning like a second sun. For a moment there was silence. Then a voice echoed, not through the speakers, but directly in their minds. "Do not fear. The threshold must open." Everyone froze. They could feel the words, not as sound, but as emotion, as intent. Some felt calm, others overwhelmed by dread. The voice didn't feel evil. It felt ancient, inevitable, like a tide pulling them toward something vast and unchangeable. On Earth, the same voice reached billions of people at once. It wasn't a broadcast. It was a connection. Every human mind caught fragments, memories that weren't their own, flashes of cities under alien skies, faces that looked human but wore clothing of impossible design. It was like seeing glimpses of a forgotten age. Scientists tried to interpret the data, but none of their equipment could record it. The signals weren't electromagnetic or gravitational. They were something beyond measurement. One researcher looked up from her console and said in disbelief, "It's rewriting consciousness. It's rewriting us." Back in space, alien fleets gathered what little strength they had left. The remnants of the Council forces formed an alliance of desperation. They could see the storm forming around Earth, an expanding sphere of light that distorted reality itself. "We can't let it spread," said the Zor commander. "If it finishes whatever it's doing, it won't stop with humans. It will consume us all. But what if it's not a weapon?" The Veln replied. "What if it's an evolution? Then we end it before it evolves." They fired everything they had: fusion torpedoes, plasma lances, planetary disruptors. The void between Earth and Mars lit up with blinding fury. But as the weapons hit the glowing field, they simply dissolved, vanishing like smoke in sunlight. Human sensors recorded it all. The attacks never even touched the Hypercore. The energy field absorbed them and grew stronger. Luna Base shook from the resonance. The Admiral stood at the center of the command room, gripping the edge of the table. "They're panicking," he said quietly. "They think they can stop this. Can we?" asked his deputy. He didn't answer. He looked out the viewport toward Earth, its surface glowing softly under the strange white aura. "I don't think anyone can." Inside the Hypercore vault, the scientists witnessed something extraordinary. The pulsing light split into countless thin beams that shot through the walls, passing harmlessly through matter. Each beam stretched out into the void, connecting to the ancient relic sites across the solar system. One by one, those relics activated, monoliths rising from the Martian dust, towers emerging from Europa's ice, silent constructs lighting up across the asteroid belt. The network was complete, and with it came the sound, low, deep, and resonant, like the heartbeat of the universe itself. People across Earth dropped to their knees as the sky turned a blinding white for a single second. When it dimmed, something enormous hung over the planet, a structure made of light and geometry that defied logic. It wasn't a ship. It was a gateway. The Admiral stared at it, his breath heavy. "It's opening," he said. The technicians tried to focus the cameras, but the sensors failed to capture what was on the other side. There were stars, but not their stars. Shapes, but not familiar ones. And then, without warning, the voice returned, louder, more defined. "Humanity, you have fulfilled the first directive. The path awaits, choose." The room shook violently. Every human mind felt it at once, a pull, a sensation like being invited into infinity. The countdown timer that had been climbing finally stopped. The number froze at 10 Gawa, and the Admiral's voice was steady but filled with awe.
10 hours until what?"
No one answered. Outside, the alien armadas scattered, retreating into the darkness, their sensors failing to capture what now surrounded the solar system. The Hypercore's light had expanded into a full sphere, protecting everything within it. The Admiral looked at his officers, his voice heavy. "We've reached the edge of everything we understand. The next step," he glanced toward the glowing horizon, "will decide what humanity becomes." The hum deepened, vibrating through every living cell. The gateway shimmered. The stars beyond it twisted and rearranged, forming shapes that looked disturbingly like human eyes. The voice spoke one last time before silence fell. "Confirm initiation of Phase 3. And then everything went dark. The darkness that followed was absolute. Every screen, every power source, every star visible from Earth's surface vanished in a single heartbeat. Humanity stood under a silent sky, unsure if they were alive or trapped in some frozen moment between seconds. Then slowly, light began to return. But it wasn't the familiar glow of the sun. It was something colder, sharper, as if reality itself had been peeled open. In Luna Command, the crew's eyes adjusted to the faint glow of the emergency lights. Systems were offline, yet somehow the Hypercore chamber still pulsed faintly beneath the surface. The Admiral leaned forward over the main console, his voice low. "Report, what just happened?" The communications officer swallowed. "Sir, and it's not just us. Every planet, every colony, complete blackout. Even the stars disappeared from all visible readings for exactly 60 seconds. 60 seconds, the Admiral repeated. And then, something else came through. He turned to the display. On the static-filled monitor, a faint image flickered in and out. Lines of data, coordinates that didn't belong to any known system. "That's not one of ours," the Admiral said quietly. The technician nodded nervously. "It's not alien either, sir. The signal pattern, it's identical to the Hypercore's base code, but inverted. Like a mirror image." The room fell silent. A mirrored signal meant only one thing. There was another source. Another Hypercore. The realization hit everyone at once. "You mean," one officer whispered, "there's a second one?" "Somewhere out there," the Admiral said, his eyes narrowing. "And it just woke up." Across the galaxy, alien survivors detected the same energy surge. But this time the signal didn't come from Earth. It came from the opposite side of the galactic rim beyond any known civilization. The readings were identical to the Hypercores, only reversed in polarity. If the human core radiated light and creation, this one emitted shadow and decay. Two forces now existed in perfect opposition. Back on Luna, the scientists confirmed what everyone feared. "It's resonating with ours," one said, staring at the live data feed. "But the pattern isn't synchronized, it's responding. Every time our Hypercore pulses, the other one counters it. Like it's trying to balance it." The Admiral frowned. "Balance it? Or stop it?" Before anyone could answer, the ground trembled violently. The Hypercore's pulse shifted color, from white to a deep shimmering gold. It was stronger than before, but now it flickered with instability. The energy field around the solar system began to fluctuate, creating flashes of distortion that bent light and matter. Outside, Earth's sky rippled like water. Cities across the world reported strange phenomena. Buildings shimmering, time slowing for seconds, people seeing glimpses of their surroundings repeating like echoes. Humanity had bent the universe once, but now the universe was pushing back. The Admiral activated the emergency intercom. "This is Fleet Command. All stations brace for gravitational distortion. Maintain position. No one fires unless ordered." The voice of the Hypercore returned, faint and distorted. "Anomaly detected. Parallel construct approaching. Directive conflict initiated." The technicians exchanged uneasy looks. "Sir, it's aware of the other core." "Of course it is," the Admiral muttered. "They're connected. Two sides of the same creation." But something else began happening, something far more unsettling. In the moments after the two signals collided, the Hypercore's network started pulling images and data from human minds again. But this time, what appeared on the screens wasn't human memory. It was something older. The visuals showed worlds covered in machinery, endless cities made of light and towering figures that weren't flesh or metal, but something in between. They looked vaguely human, but their eyes glowed like stars. They were builders, engineers of the Hypercore long before humanity existed. And they weren't gone. "They're communicating through the link," one scientist whispered. "Whoever built the cores, they're trying to speak." On the screen, the image of one of those beings came into focus. It reached out, its lips unmoving, but a voice filled the room. "We left two gates. One for creation, one for correction. You have awakened both." The air grew cold. The Admiral's throat tightened. "Correction?" he repeated. "The mirror core," said the being, its tone distant and sorrowful. "It was built to restore balance. When one ascends, the other descends. When one creates life, the other unravels it. They cannot coexist." The feed broke into static. A technician turned to the Admiral. "Sir, if they can't coexist, what happens to us?" The Admiral stared at the white glow outside. "We're standing between them." As if in answer, alarms blared across the base. "Sir!" shouted the radar operator. Massive anomaly incoming, far side of the solar barrier. The display lit up with a colossal gravitational signature. The second core had arrived. Not a physical object, but a storm of dark energy twisting through space. It swallowed light, devoured signals, and radiated cold like death itself. Every ship caught near its edge vanished without a trace. The alien remnants who had survived the first war saw it too. Their leaders, once ready to destroy humanity, now broadcast a universal warning. The Shadow Core will consume everything. If humanity controls the light, they must act before both merge. If they collide, the galaxy will collapse into itself. Back on Luna, the Hypercore began to vibrate violently. "Containment breach," someone yelled. "The energy field can't stabilize with the second signal this close." The Admiral gripped the railing as the entire base shook. "Options? We can shut it down, but it'll collapse the entire network." "If we shut it down, the Shadow Core wins," he said. "If we leave it running, both might destroy everything." The scientists exchanged terrified looks. Humanity was trapped in the middle of a cosmic tug-of-war. Two opposite forces, one born of creation, the other of correction, were now drawn toward each other like magnets. And Earth was their meeting point. Outside, the gateway above the planet flared open again, but this time it didn't reveal stars. It revealed darkness, an endless storm swirling with lightning made of pure void. Inside that storm, something massive began to emerge, its shape hidden but unmistakably intelligent. The Hypercore's voice returned louder than before. "Directive Alpha compromised. External interference detected, awaiting human decision." Every head turned toward the Admiral. "What does it mean, human decision?" a technician asked. He stared at the gateway, his voice heavy. "It's asking us to choose, creation or correction." But the voice continued before anyone could reply. "Failure to decide will result in system convergence." Convergence? The scientist's face went pale. "That means both cores merging. If that happens, everything will collapse into a single point. Space-time, memory, all of it." For a moment no one spoke. Then quietly the Admiral said, "Then we'd better decide fast." The base began to shake violently again as the gravitational waves increased. The light of the Hypercore clashed with the incoming shadow, creating a brilliant explosion of color across the void. Every star within light years dimmed. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations watched the impossible spectacle unfolding. The birth of something new. Or perhaps, the end of everything. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. Inside Luna Command, alarms blared, the lights flickered, and the Hypercore's hum reached a deafening pitch. The countdown timer appeared on every screen again, only this time it wasn't counting down or up. It simply pulsed, frozen, waiting for input, and then the voice spoke once more, softer now, almost pleading. "Humanity, choose your destiny." The Admiral looked at his crew, then at the trembling world beyond the glass. His heart pounded, but before he could answer, the power surged again and the entire base was flooded with blinding light. And from somewhere deep within that light, another voice, human this time, whispered, "You were never meant to choose." The light was overwhelming, pure and blinding, swallowing everything in sight. The ground beneath Luna Base vanished from feeling. The air turned silent, and even the sound of the Admiral's own heartbeat faded away. For one breathless instant, humanity stood between creation and annihilation. Then the light shifted, splitting into two halves, one brilliant gold and one deep shadow. The crew could barely see. The Hypercore chamber glowed like a small sun, while the view outside showed the Shadow Core stretching across space, its surface alive with lightning made of black fire. The two forces had met, and yet neither consumed the other. They circled, pulsing, waiting, like two minds trying to understand one another. The Admiral's voice broke through the silence. "Status," a trembling technician replied. "Both cores are stable, but interacting. They're not destroying each other, it's communication." Everyone turned to the central display. Two symbols appeared, one golden, one black. They rotated slowly, forming a single ring. The Hypercore's voice returned, soft but layered with urgency.
"Directive conflict resolved through synthesis."
"Final protocol pending, awaiting human input." The Admiral frowned. "Synthesis? What does that mean?" The scientist at his side stared at the data in awe. "It's merging them, but not to destroy. It's creating balance, creation and correction in one system." He looked toward the glowing horizon, and it's asking humanity to complete it. Outside, the two cosmic forces began to spiral closer, threads of light and shadow weaving together into something neither dark nor bright. It was beautiful and terrifying. The energy readings spiked beyond measurable limits. If this failed, the entire galaxy would collapse into a singularity. Then the voice of the Hypercore changed. It was no longer distant or mechanical. It sounded human, familiar. "You have reached the convergence point. The system cannot continue without a conscious choice. Do you wish to ascend?" The Admiral froze. He recognized that voice. It was his own. Every monitor across the base reflected the same thing. Each person saw themselves speaking back, their own voice echoing through the system. It wasn't an external entity giving orders anymore. It was humanity's collective consciousness speaking as one. The Hypercore hadn't been guiding them. It had been learning from them, evolving through every human thought, emotion, and memory it absorbed. The realization hit all at once. Humanity had become the core. The Admiral's voice shook slightly. If we are the system, then what happens if we choose to ascend? The voice replied gently. You evolve beyond this form. Space, time, and matter become extensions of thought. You will no longer be limited to this galaxy, but if you refuse, the shadow will complete the correction, and life will return to silence. Either extinction or transcendence, whispered the technician. There's no middle ground. Outside, the forces began to fuse. The golden energy intertwined with the black storm. The collision creating a soundless shockwave that rippled through the stars. Alien fleets light years away watched in despair and awe as the Milky Way itself seemed to shimmer. The laws of physics wavered. Time slowed. Reality bent. Inside Luna Base, the ground trembled. Warnings flashed red across every surface. Critical convergence, 99%. The Admiral took one last look at Earth through the viewport. The blue world glowed softly under the golden light, fragile yet unyielding. He thought about the millions of lives watching the sky, unaware of how close they stood to vanishing, or becoming something more. He closed his eyes. If this is humanity's choice, then we choose to live. He pressed the confirmation. The Hypercore erupted in white brilliance. The Shadow Core flared in response, its darkness turning into a mirror of the same light. The two collided, and for an instant everything stopped. No sound, no motion, no breath. And then it began. A wave of energy burst outward from the solar system, spreading faster than light. Planets that had been scarred by war began to heal, their atmospheres restoring, their oceans returning. Broken alien worlds far away saw their dying suns reignite. Space itself rippled with renewal. The Hypercore and its mirror were no longer separate entities. They had become one, an equilibrium that balanced destruction with creation. Humanity felt it too. Every mind connected for one fleeting moment. Memories, dreams, and emotions intertwined into a single shared consciousness. People saw through each other's eyes, felt one another's fears and hopes. For the first time in history, humanity understood itself completely. The Admiral felt warmth spreading through his body, not burning, not electric, but like a gentle pulse of life. Around him, his crew stood frozen in awe, their eyes reflecting the same golden glow. Sir, one whispered, we're still here. He smiled faintly. No, we're everywhere. Outside, the merged core stabilized. It was no longer a weapon or a threat. It hovered above Earth like a luminous ring, half light, half shadow, turning slowly, its surface alive with shifting patterns of energy. It pulsed once, twice, and then sent one final message through every network in the galaxy. Directive Alpha complete. The choice has been made. Balance restored, and then it went silent. The stars returned to their rightful places. The distortion faded. Ships across space regained control. The universe itself seemed to exhale. The war was truly over, but as calm spread, a single monitor deep inside Luna Command flickered with static. The Admiral turned toward it, frowning. What's that? The static cleared, revealing a single line of text glowing faintly. Phase 4 initializing. The crew stared, frozen. Phase 4? The technician whispered. There's another phase? Before anyone could respond, the message shifted again. A new set of coordinates appeared, far beyond the edge of the known universe, pointing toward an uncharted region of absolute darkness. Then a voice, faint but unmistakably human, whispered through the static. You thought balance was the end? It was only the beginning. The screen went black. Outside, in the farthest reaches of the cosmos, something stirred, an ancient pulse, faint but awakening. The merged Hypercore flickered once, as if sensing it. The Admiral looked up at the stars, his heart heavy with wonder and dread. Humanity had survived, evolved, and changed the galaxy forever. But somewhere beyond the light, something else had been waiting for this very moment. And as the stars settled into silence, one final truth echoed through the depths of space. The war for survival was over, but the war for existence had just begun. The light faded slowly, leaving only a soft golden glow across the surface of the moon. Luna Base was quiet for the first time in days. The tremors had stopped, the alarms were silent, and the air felt still, as if the entire universe had taken a deep breath and finally exhaled. The Hypercore, once a roaring star of power, now rested as a calm sphere of light humming softly like a heartbeat. No one moved at first. The crew stood frozen, unsure if what they were seeing was peace or the calm before another storm. The Admiral was the first to speak. His voice, hoarse but steady, broke the silence. "Status report." A young officer, hands trembling, looked at her console. "All systems stable, sir. The Hypercore has entered a neutral state. The shadow resonance is gone." He looked at the screen. For the first time, the data made sense. "And Earth?" The answer came with a smile. "Blue skies, sir. No more energy surges. Communications restored." He exhaled deeply, a weight lifting from his chest. "Then we did it." Outside, the stars had returned to their places. The endless darkness of space looked familiar again, but not quite the same. The light from the merged core shimmered faintly, reflecting across the glass of the command deck. It was beautiful, like a reminder of what humanity had risked everything for. Messages started coming through from the colonies. Mars, Titan, Europa, all reporting the same thing. Stable conditions, renewed life readings, and atmospheric restoration. The Hypercore's pulse had spread further than anyone realized. It hadn't just saved humanity. It had healed the scars of war across dozens of worlds. In the command room, the crew began to smile, some crying quietly, others laughing in disbelief. The scientist who had spent years studying the Hypercore wiped her eyes. "I don't understand how it worked," she said softly. "Two opposite forces, light and shadow. They were supposed to destroy each other." The Admiral looked out the window toward the glowing sphere. "Maybe they weren't opposites," he said. "Maybe they were parts of the same whole, waiting for us to bring them together." Far across the galaxy, alien transmissions flooded in. Some were cautious, others hopeful. The same species that had once feared humanity now reached out to them for guidance. The Council worlds that had predicted Earth's destruction now faced the reality of something they couldn't explain. Humans had not just survived. They had rewritten the laws of existence. One transmission caught the Admiral's attention. It came from a Zor commander, one of the few alien leaders who had fought until the very end. "To the humans of Earth," the message began, "we misjudged you. We thought you were chaos, but you brought balance. Perhaps you were the key the galaxy needed." The Admiral watched in silence, then replied simply, "We didn't bring balance. We just remembered who we were." Weeks passed. The Hypercore remained stable, orbiting quietly near the moon like a second guardian. Scientists studied it from a distance, but no one dared to interfere again. Humanity had learned that some powers weren't meant to be controlled. They were meant to be understood. Down on Earth, cities rebuilt faster than ever. The war that had nearly ended them all became a story of unity. People began calling the event the Convergence. It wasn't about victory anymore, it was about rebirth. Children grew up under skies filled with auroras, remnants of the energy wave that had swept across the planet. They were told stories of the Hypercore, the great light that ended the war in minutes and began a new era in the same breath. The Admiral eventually returned to Earth. He stood on a high plateau overlooking what was once a ruined city now blooming with life again. Plants grew where ashes once covered the ground. Humanity had not only survived, they had changed. They were connected in subtle ways that no one could fully explain. People could sense each other's emotions more deeply, understand one another faster, and for the first time in centuries there was no division strong enough to start another war. One evening, as he watched the horizon, the scientist from Luna Base joined him. She handed him a small device, a portable scanner that had been tracking the Hypercore's signal. "It's still active," she said softly. "It's broadcasting on a new frequency. Not to the stars this time, inward." He frowned. "Inward?" She nodded. "It's connecting to us, to our DNA. It's like it's still evolving, but through us now." The Admiral stared at the glowing moon above. "Maybe that was its plan all along," he said. "Not to change the universe, but to change us." In the following months, humanity began to advance faster than ever before. Technology that once took decades to build now emerged in weeks. Energy was no longer scarce. Disease began to vanish. The same power that once threatened to end everything was now giving life to everything it touched. But not all mysteries had answers. Some nights people still reported seeing strange shapes in the sky. massive structures of light far beyond the edge of the solar system. Scientists said it was residual energy, but others believed the builders of the Hypercore were watching, waiting to see what humanity would do next. One night, the Admiral stood outside his home gazing at the sky when his communicator chimed. It was the same scientist again. "Sir," she said, her voice calm but uncertain, "we just picked up a faint signal. It's the same pattern from before, the one labeled Phase 4. He looked up at the stars, the faint golden glow of the Hypercore reflecting in his eyes. "Where's it coming from?" "Not outside the galaxy this time," she said. "It's coming from here." From Earth, he didn't speak. The wind carried the sound of distant waves and the faint hum of restored cities. For the first time, he realized the Hypercore hadn't just changed the world, it had merged with it. Humanity wasn't separate from the creation anymore. They were the continuation of it. He smiled faintly. "Then maybe that's what Phase 4 means," he said. "Not another beginning. Just us, learning what we've become." He turned his eyes back to the moon one last time. The Hypercore shimmered faintly, pulsing once as if answering him. The stars around it seemed brighter, their light clearer than ever before. It wasn't a warning. It was a reminder. Humanity had finally done what no species before had achieved. They didn't conquer the universe. They understood it. They found balance between chaos and order, creation and destruction, light and shadow, and in that balance they found themselves. The next morning, the first interstellar vessel launched from Luna Base. Its name was the Ascendant. On its hull was a simple symbol, a golden ring split by a single line of shadow glowing softly under the sunlight. Humanity's mark. As it drifted toward the stars, the Admiral watched from Earth, knowing this wasn't the end of their story. It was the continuation of something much greater, because somewhere out there, beyond even the Hypercore's reach, the universe was listening, and this time it would remember humanity not for their wars but for their awakening.